The development of an athlete is a very widely discussed topic in the sports world. It can determine if you make a team, how much playing time you get, and so on. There are two main types of development among athletes: physical development and mental development. What do those two things mean? What does it mean to develop mentally, and what does it mean to develop physically?
So, I think physical and mental preparedness for an athlete they're both important. On the physical side of things, you gotta weight train, you gotta eat right, you gotta sleep, you gotta do like your skill work as an athlete. So that's one side of the coin. And then mentally, you have to be focused, you have to be invested, you have to be committed and disciplined. You can use a plethora of different terms for that, but I don't think anyone really is more important, but I think they both hold extreme significance. But for every athlete, I think it's different. I think as an athlete, you need to know yourself and know what's most important for you. You could be a super swole guy and mentally you're not there. You might not be invested. You might not, you might have some anxiety, or you might have some mental performance issues that you got to address, or vice versa. I think that's what's most important, is realizing what you are as an athlete and where you lie on either side of the coin.
Okay. Well, I'll start out by saying that there's three areas. There's the mind, the body, and the soul. You got to have all three. Okay. The body is the physical plant. That's the muscles, the tissue, the size, the power, the speed, all those things that you have to become an athlete. And you can be the strongest, the fastest, the quickest person in the world, but if you don't have the other two elements, then you're a waste of time. The other one is the mental. The mental part of it is the mind, being able to handle the pressure, handle the problems that come along with it. Because in training, you don't just go in a straight line up. There's peaks and valleys in there. There's a yin and yang. There's what goes up and comes down. That's the waves, the low tide and the high tide. And so the mind is the athlete's ability to handle that kind of pressure, handle that things when things are not going good and things are going good. The soul is the foundation. That's what gives you the solid rocks ability to be able to handle and juggle both of those two, the mind and body. So if you got all three, you got it made. It's like a three-legged stool. Okay, as long as all three legs are on the ground, you're going to sit fine. But if one leg is short, then the whole thing falls down. So mind, body, soul, the three elements that you have to have.
Now that we understand a little more about physical development and mental development, I wanted to dig a little deeper and try and find out among the athletes what is more important, physical development or mental development, and what variables go into making that decision.
The mental aspect of baseball is very important. It's very essential in our daily lives as baseball players. Compared to the physical aspect, you can be in the best shape of your life. You can be in the best shape of a baseball player. You can perform to the best of your abilities, practice as hard as you can for 10 hours a day, but will it really affect the outcome of your performance in game? Not so much. Baseball is a sport that's almost 90% mental and 10% physical, where your mental aspect takes on a lot. If you go in a game negative thinking negatively, your performance will most likely come out negative. If your performance is based off of how you feel, you most likely won't perform to the best of your abilities. So it depends on how you mentally prepare and mentally, interact with the game and how you handle your situations. If you fail and you continue to have that mentality of failing, you'll continue to fail physically. So it all depends on the mental aspect. If you're positive, you continue to create that positive mindset and have a confident. If you have the same confidence when you're standing up to the plate, mental confidence and the mental ability to stay strong even when you're doing wrong, you'll be able to perform in the right ways and in the best ways. When you let your mental take over your physical, is where sometimes it can go the wrong way for you.
As far as which part of the physical or the mental aspect that I think is more important is, I feel like the mental aspect of things are very important, because that is something that a lot of athletes in general struggle with, but I think more so even from the female aspect, just because a lot of times they want to come off and feel as though they have something that they have to prove, and they're wanting to act as though they have this this really hard exterior just to kind of just to prove a point against somebody, say if they're competing for a position or anything like that, or even if it's just everyday life, whether it's classes, they feel like they have something to prove in the classroom to their teachers, really just with everything. And that can also factor into the physical aspect of things, because if someone is having difficulties mentally, then it can also show in a physical aspect, whether that's them losing weight, them them kind of excluding themselves from their teammates, from their classmates, even just not going to class in general. So I think it starts from the mental aspect, and then it definitely feeds into the physical aspect.
And then junior year rolled around, the season rolled around, and it's for some reason it all disappeared. And that was the year where COVID hit. And a week before COVID hit, actually, I partially tore a couple ligaments in my elbow. Luckily enough, I didn't need surgery or anything. But I had to be shut down for months. And not throwing a baseball was like one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. I mean, it got to the point where I started throwing left-handed. And then I looked back and I reflected on my years at Savannah State, knowing I have one more left. And I was like, it was never a question about my physicality. It was more, was I mentally ready? And I look back and I was mentally ready, but I wasn't mentally tough. And so I sought out help from a professional. I went to therapy. Lucky enough, my therapist, he was a former college athlete. So he understood the ins and outs of being a college athlete and being an athlete in general. And we just worked through a lot of things. We worked through when things don't go the way that you have planned in the head, to stay grounded. I look back at my film before therapy and after therapy, and you would see my head literally spinning around the mound. And my teammates knew, as well as my coaches knew, as well as I eventually learned, I wasn't there anymore. And unfortunately, I had to be pulled. But then I look at video after the fact, and I would pinch my pants as a way to say, okay, Manny, I'm grounded. Something happened. Take care of the batter at the plate. Maintain the runner at first or second or whatever, and go about doing your business. And if you look at my numbers and my stats before therapy and after therapy, night and day, except for one outing where I just didn't have my stuff that day. But you take away that outing, I put up zeros the whole season. I felt confident. I felt I can go and do anything I ever wanted to. If I wish I went to therapy a lot sooner. But of course, it's a journey, not a sprint. It's a marathon, not a sprint. So yeah, that's basically where I'm at, where I stand with whether it's more physical or it's more mental. And it really is mental. I mean, you can have all the strength, all the right mechanics, do all the right things, hit all the right buttons. But if you're not sound up here, this doesn't mean anything.
So baseball is super mental, but also another mental sport is football. Mental health is definitely important when it comes to sports, because everything starts mentally. When you're on the football field, you have to know the playbook, you have to know the play, you have to know your assignment, where you have to be in certain situations. And it's hard to do that when mentally, like, you're clogged up from social problems or problems off the field. So mental health is definitely like an important thing when it comes to sports. It's definitely something that shouldn't be taken lightly. There's a lot of people who quit sports just because mentally they weren't there. They weren't clear-headed, and they felt like all the problems off the field prevented them from being as great as they possibly could have been on the field. So mental health is definitely a big issue when it comes to sport-related things.
Physical and mental development definitely varies among athletes. For instance, different sports have different variables that go into making the decision for that athlete. There is no right or wrong answer to this question, and it'll probably continue to be a long debated sports question. What is more important, physical development or mental development?